Good evening, gentle viewers and readers and listeners, whatever you are. Hello, it is I, Wentz Hesselman. Yeah, it's late and I'm loopy. I'm drinking tea. I've had my share of sugar, so I'm gonna be a little on the unpredictable side, which is great because tonight I am doing a reaction video to one of my friend's projects. My friend Monty Cristo, support his Patreon. I'll have the link in the show notes. My friend Monty Cristo has done several reaction videos to my projects, so it's time for me to do a reaction video to one of his. This is the first chapter in his novel, which is updated regularly. His novel, Sheep in Wolf's Clothing, and I'm reacting to the audiobook format of this first chapter. I am going in blind for the most part. I think I have heard the first 10 or 15 seconds of this. So everything you see is not contrived. This is a genuine reaction video. So let's make this happen and let's get into Mr. Cristo's world of fiction, whatever it may be.
Sheep in Wolf's Clothing by Monty Cristo. Chapter 1. Heating Up. Here, at the moment of truth, Marvin found himself at a loss for words. It wasn't as if he hadn't prepared. That morning he had bought her favorite roses in the village square, along with the ring, using the money he had been saving up for months. He had gone over what he was going to say hundreds of times in his head, trying to find the right words to express the depth of his feelings. But now, looking into the eyes of the woman he loved, everything was forgotten. He stood as if in a daze, clutching the roses, as the pair stood just outside the home where Fiona and her family lived. Marvin's reverie continued for a few long seconds. Then, finally, realizing that she was looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and
Okay, so far, I am going to add a few comments. Just the way my brain works, I'm a very visual thinker. The very first thing that I try to do when I'm listening to a news story is imagine what everything looks like. So my brain immediately starts digging for clues as to what time period this is, what part of the world this is, or if it's a fantasy setting, what part of the world this might resemble. We've got names Fiona and Marvin. Those are not exactly ancient, dated names. So far, my brain is picturing a couple that are probably in a time period that's fairly close to our own current day, this being the year 2020. Mentioned the word village. There's villages around here in the state of Illinois. That could be a village here in the Midwest, it could be a village in another country. But again, the names Fiona and Marvin are not that exotic. So I'm kind of picturing a setting, a rural, small-town setting that you probably could observe here in Illinois. Maybe. My brain is gonna keep digging for details.
concerned. He returned to reality and regained his... Marvin's reverie continued for a few long seconds. Then, finally, realizing that she was looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and concern, he returned to reality and regained his ability to speak. I had everything planned out. Everything I was going to say to you. But now that I see you, what I planned to say just won't come out. What I mean to say is, we've known each other since we were children. We would laugh, running through the forest without a care in the world. We grew up together. And what I've come to realize over the years is that I love you, Fiona. I truly love you more than anything else. You are beautiful, but you are also kind, smart, funny, and honest. You are all those things, and you act as though you don't even know. Many women that don't have half of what you have are full of themselves, but you never are. You're never arrogant or haughty. You afford everyone dignity. And I'm ashamed because I wish I was that type of person. But when I'm with you, it helps me to realize the man I want to be, a better man.
You can tell that he has chosen his words very carefully. You can tell that he has gone over those words for hours because there's nothing off the cuff about it. You afford other people dignity. Nobody that's thinking off the cuff talks like that. So he has invested a lot in this moment. He's willing to risk sounding a little bit stilted just for the sake of being able to spell out what he has in his heart for this girl. Okay? And again, on the aspect of world building, perceiving where we are, they used to play in the forest together. So this is definitely some kind of rural setting, some small town setting.
The type of man that would deserve someone like you. Every time I'm around you, you brighten my day with your presence. Marvin reached into his pocket and pulled out the ring. He knelt down and looked up at Fiona lovingly, holding it out to her. So now I'm asking you, would you brighten all of my days forever? Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Fiona looked down at him, eyes wide open, her hands clasped over her mouth. She took a deep breath and started to tear up. Wow, she said. I never knew that you felt that way about me.
You never knew that he felt that way about you. No hint, no clue at all. You never caught him staring, or you never had him have trouble talking to you, maybe blushing boyishly. Surely she saw it coming a little bit. Or maybe she just doesn't know how to react now that he's finally come out with it. I think we're going to find out that she had some reason to see a little bit of this coming at some point. Maybe.
With all of my heart, said Marvin. Fiona took another deep breath. She closed her eyes for a moment, then reopened them, tears falling down her cheek. I'm flattered, she said. You have always been a good friend. But I don't love you. Marvin's expression didn't change, as it took him a moment to register what she said. What? I don't love you, she repeated. At least, not like that. I like you, but as a friend. I can't marry you. I'm sorry. Then, after repeating her apology, she wiped her eyes and ran back into the house, leaving Marvin kneeling in the dirt, dumbstruck. He stayed there for a couple of minutes before finally standing up and walking off in a daze of disbelief. As he
It sounds like he felt that there was no way that she could say no. It sounds like he expected that there would be no other outcome besides her going for him hook, line, and sinker and saying, yes, I will marry you. I mean, it would be I don't think he weighed the remotest possibility that she would say, well, I do not accept. For him to be that gobsmacked. Like, oh, yes, huh? What? You won't marry me? That wasn't in the script. Hold on. Surely I made some notes on this somewhere. Yeah, so this could possibly be some foreshadowing to some instability. Like the older gentleman who felt that the Hannah Montana actress, Miley Cyrus, the older gentleman who felt that Miley Cyrus was sending him secret messages through the television camera just by looking into it. This was some years ago. He made news because he showed up at one of her events because he felt that she had been sending him messages just by looking into the camera a certain way, that she wanted him to meet her at this place, at this event, so that they could get married. You know, it never even entered this man's mind that she had no idea who he was, that he would scare the bejesus out of her just by showing up at one of her concerts or whatever it was. You know, and it was sad because they had to haul the poor guy away. He wasn't really dangerous. He was just nuts. He was obsessed. He was completely zoomed in on this notion that she is mine and there will be no other outcome. And I wonder if we're seeing a tinge of that in this guy. Anyway, continuing.
He ambled aimlessly through the village of Whitehaven. The reality of what happened slowly began to set in. Soon he found himself walking through the forest outside of the village, the same forest where he and Fiona had played as children. There Marvin stopped and fell against a tree. As his emotions stirred inside him, he broke down and started to sob bitterly. He sank down to the ground, shaking and crying. He had bared his heart to Fiona, and she had torn it apart. He tried to compose himself, but the tears kept welling.
She tore it apart. He bared his heart to her, and she tore it apart. I actually thought she handled that pretty well. I thought she let him down rather gently. I once observed some years ago a beautiful girl in a Wendy's, a customer, and some young man, evidently shy, had observed her, didn't know her, also another customer observed her, worked up the nerve to approach her in front of her friends, in front of his friends, and ask her if she would like to go out to eat sometime. Her response, well, I don't eat where I insert extreme word for defecate. That is tearing apart someone's heart when they bear it. Miss Fiona, she was firm, but she was also fair. She even gave him credit for being a good friend. You've always been a good friend. This is not a wholesale rejection. It's just that I can't see myself spending the rest of my life with you in this capacity. So, further adding to my impression that our Mr. Marvin is tottering on the edge of some level of instability. Okay, let's go.
His sobs continued to grow in intensity until he started to blubber and cough. Marvin had never felt pain like this before. He would rather have been beaten within an inch of his life than be rejected in such a way. As he reflected on what happened, he started to feel ashamed of himself for crying like an infant. He should have never opened himself up in the first place. His foolishness had made him vulnerable, and now he was paying the price. He thought about Fiona's answer.
Okay, yeah, when a girl says no, she usually means it. But there's also something to be said for persistence, Mr. Marvin. He evidently had a lot riding on this one moment. To the point that if she said no this time, she would say no any other time. Rather than, well, okay, I'll try again at a later date. Maybe wait for the shock to wear off and, Fiona, did you mean what you said? I know I kind of laid it out, like, oh, will you marry me? Didn't give you time to see it coming. That's another thing. If he bought her flowers, how did she not see it? I don't know. I don't know these people. I'm just eavesdropping on their lives and their personal miseries. Okay, onward.
What did she mean when she said she didn't love him like that? Did she think he was unattractive? Was she interested in someone else? Questions ran through his head, but no satisfying answers were forthcoming, and all possible reasons left him feeling even worse. No other man would ever love her the way he loved her. How dare she do that to him? She had to be especially spiteful to make him feel like that. He had loved her, but she hated him. Now that she had the opportunity to destroy him, she probably relished the pain she caused. Marvin imagined Fiona laughing with her friends at his pathetic proposal. The tears ceased.
Again, he seems to be just pulling these conclusions about her character out of thin air. I mean, none of this is based on evidence. I've only known Fiona for just a few minutes, and it seems like she's not the type that would She was polite, she was nice, she was firm, which shows that she has a healthy sense of self and boundaries that she has placed not just for Marvin, but for everybody when it comes to herself. That's just healthy. So Marvin feels like he has been denied something that is his right by her exercising the ability to enforce these boundaries around what is hers. Planet Earth, including you, Marvin, you can only come this far. Thank you for knocking, but I'm not going to let you in further than this. So it's like the rejection that he's suffered is taking on a life entirely all its own, where the Fiona that rejected him and the Fiona that is now in his head are two completely different people.
And a dark scowl formed on Marvin's face. Fiona was evil. She thought that she could just treat him like dirt and wash her hands of it. Marvin stood up as his scowl became more and more fierce. She wouldn't get away with it. Marvin started to walk back to the village at a quick pace, his determination giving him new energy. For if he couldn't have her, then neither could anyone else. Night had fallen. The full moon shone bright over the village of Whitehaven. The only other source of light outside on this dark night was the glow from a torch being held in the hand of a shadowy figure walking in the gloom, strips of cloth obscuring his face. Marvin had left his nose and eyes uncovered, but even so, the makeshift mask felt stifling. Everybody was asleep. Marvin did not think he would be seen at this hour of the night, but it was still wise to take necessary precautions.
Again, back to world building. He's carrying a torch. I've read just enough stories where torch applies equally to torch, fire, but also torch, policeman. Can I look inside your car? So I'm still not completely grounded in what sort of time period we're in yet. Maybe there will be further clues along the way.
Soon he arrived at the home where he had been so ruthlessly rejected hours.
If this were a completely modern setting, he would look a little out of place holding a fiery torch. So maybe this is a slightly more dated era. I mean, if this is the age where there's electric street lamps, and here's dude out with covered face and a torch, it's only a matter of time before somebody's like, them dang Satan worshippers are at it again. I don't know. I'm going to keep on going before this turns into a 90-minute video.
Earlier, as he stood in front of Fiona's home, the words, "I don't love you," echoed in his mind. Now he felt the same, the love that he felt for her, a thing of the past, transformed into a hatred that burned brighter than the torch in his hand.
Fire.
He had no choice. He had to get revenge for the cruelty he had endured. People like Fiona didn't deserve to live. The home was a modest dwelling made of thatch. It would not take long for the flames to spread. Marvin walked forward to start the fire. Then suddenly, he stopped. Fiona's parents lived there too. It wasn't fair that they should die for her sins. They were innocent. Besides, he thought, I'm not a cold-blooded murderer. Fiona's mother and father didn't deserve this. Or did they? Fiona had to get her cruel tendencies from somewhere. The most likely explanation was that her parents had trained her to be callous. Her upbringing, no doubt, turned her into the monster she was. In that case, her parents were even more responsible than her.
It's almost like that rejection was a drop of ink in water, and it is just spreading and spreading and spreading. Fiona's beautiful and wonderful. No, she's evil. She's laughing about me behind my back. I'm gonna kill her. Oh, Fiona's parents, they're nice. They didn't mean for this to happen. Oh, yes, they did. They probably taught her to be that way. They're probably telling her how proud they are of her right now. Unstable. Unstable.
If he waited to punish Fiona alone, her mother and father would be left to mourn. They were old anyway, and didn't have but a few years at the most. It wouldn't be right for them to suffer a slow demise, spending their final years pining after the loss of their daughter. This way, they could all be united in death. But what about Jordan? Fiona's little brother was no more than 12, and he had always been courteous to Marvin. If he punished Fiona and her parents in this way, young Jordan would unjustly become a casualty. Wait, thought Marvin. Jordan usually spends the night at his friend Adam's house. It's likely that he's not even at home, in which case he would be spared. Marvin had wasted enough time pondering the potential consequences. Now it was time to act. Goodbye, Fiona, he whispered somberly as he placed the torch against the door. The fire spread even quicker than Marvin had expected, flames coursing through the front of the thatch home. In a matter of minutes, the entire house would be up in flames. Marvin couldn't stay around and watch. He knew that soon people would be coming out of their homes, alerted by the brightness of the flames. Without delay, he began running, heading back towards the forest. He had done what he had set out to do, but as he ran through the forest, the trees around him whizzing past in a blur, Marvin started to realize that he felt no better. In fact, he felt sick. Try as she might, she could not get any sleep. Marvin's proposal played again and again in her head. It was all too much to take in. Fiona tossed and turned in her bed, trying to get comfortable, hoping that she could forget the whole affair, hoping that Marvin would understand. Since she had turned him down, her thoughts had been preoccupied with Marvin's passionate expressions. What he said were some of the nicest things anyone had said to her, but it wouldn't be fair to him if she had accepted, knowing her true feelings. He would make some other girl very happy one day. She was sure of it. Moments after Fiona accepted the fact that she was going to stay awake all night, her thoughts shifted. For the first time since the proposal, something else took precedent in her mind. She smelled smoke. Quickly sitting up, she saw the flames burn brightly, spreading through the walls of her home. "Mom! Dad! Jordan!" she screamed as she jumped out of bed and ran to their rooms. Her parents awoke with a start and looked over at their frenzied daughter, still half asleep. "What is it, Fiona?" asked her mother. "Fire! We have to get out now!" yelled Fiona. All trace of sleepiness vanished as Fiona's mother and father quickly leapt to their feet. They ran out into the hallway and took a brief moment to watch the front of their home go up in flames, the smoke starting to pool around their feet. "We'll have to go out the back," shouted the father. "Jordan!" Jordan was still in bed, groggy, more asleep than awake. "I'm tired," he muttered between snores. Fiona's father ran into the room and picked the boy up off the bed, carrying him out into the hallway. The fire was blazing around them, having spread into the hallway, and the smoke was suffocating. Fiona's father ushered the family through the hallway towards the back of the home. A burning beam crackled and fell from the ceiling, barely missing Fiona's mother. The shock caused her to stumble and fall. Surrounded by flames, she desperately tried to get up, but could not find her footing. Fiona ran to grab her mother's hand and help her up. Her father ran to the back, tossed the disoriented Jordan out to the safety of the yard, and then ran back to help Fiona. The two of them lifted her and half dragged, half carried her towards the exit as the house burned. Fiona felt as though she was going to pass out due to the smoke and the weight of her mother. Her father saw her looking woozy, shifted his wife so that all her weight rested on him, and grabbed Fiona by the hand. Straining with the effort, he pulled his wife and daughter towards the exit. One last heave, and the three landed in a heap on the lawn under the night sky, completely spent. Jordan was now fully awake and shaking with fear, although he was visibly relieved that they had made it out. One by one, the exhausted family rose to their feet, taking in deep breaths of the clean air. Fiona's father beckoned for his wife and children. They came over to him, and he drew them all into an embrace. The family stood there for a long while, saddened and shocked by the loss of their home, but grateful that they were all alive, hugging one another tightly as the home they had lived in for years burned to the ground.
Okay. All right. Technical aspects, good reading, good narration, good pausing, good this and that and the other. That end kind of snuck up on me, which means I was absorbed. So there's no fat to trim there. Very interesting. I will say that 15 minutes in, that was 15 minutes and some 17 seconds, I guess, I'm still not completely sure what time period I'm in. And I guess that's not completely necessary. The mental images that I'm getting could really belong to any time period when it comes down to it. But my brain kind of obsesses over stuff like that. But that's just me. Okay. All right. That is just a taste of what Mr. Cristo serves up. He writes novels, he writes screenplays, he writes TV dramas, he writes a lot. He writes a lot more than I do. And Mr. Cristo, I'm going to include the link to your Patreon in my show notes so people can check out the rest of what you have to offer. This is Wentz Hesselman signing off, and I will catch you all at a later date.